Hello, hello, my dear. Look at this beautiful specimen of late medieval European peak technology. Look at this marvel, splendid representation of European craftsmanship. I'm gonna say the word European so much on this video that my haters that hate us will explode. Oh, I'm so gonna piss them off. But look at this beauty. It's gonna stay here on display for the world to best thing in the world. Look at that. Okay, today we are on Reddit, ladies and gentlemen, and you could be like, why the heck are you on Reddit? And why is Reddit trying to sell you underwear? I don't got a clue. Whatever. Anyways, is White Europe a myth? Ask historians. Now, here's the thing. Ask historians sometimes is fine, believe it or not. I mean, Reddit is not. Reddit is a cesspool. Reddit is a swampland. Reddit is hell. With that being said, ask historians. Sometimes you get historians that are pretty good. But as we have time and time again demonstrated on this platform, there are plenty of people who are historians, academics, professors, emeritus, but they are just activists and liars. That's what they are. And we call them out regardless. So, in fact, that title is forfeit at that point. If there is no academic neutrality, your title is forfeit. Anyways, this question has been asked. Is White Europe a myth? I appreciate that uppercase white. Whenever a show set in medieval Europe features black people, oh, come on, man. You need to put uppercase black. I'm the guy for equal. Usually, as we discussed with the stupid University of Waterloo, they tell you to do the opposite, as I have described already on a dedicated video. And so they say black always uppercase, but white lowercase, okay? And so because I am intellectually honest, differently from my haters, I will point it out. Come on, both uppercase or both lowercase. Whenever a show is set in medieval Europe features black people, there is always a significant outcry about how it, open quote, doesn't make sense, and there were no black people in Europe back then. But is it true? Even if we read this as hyperbole, I imagine that Europe would have had significant populations of non-Europeans living there. Well, you're already wrong. If they were significant, no, they were not significant. They existed, but they would have not been significant. No, particularly the hinterland, the rural lands, the homogeny when it comes to ethnicity would have been extremely high, but whatever. Since a lot of them would have moved there and settled down back when Rome rules everything. Of Rome. I thought you meant like, yeah. It's absolutely a myth, says Kelpie Cat. Hey, if Kelpie Cat says it. There were minority populations of black people and other people of color in many parts of medieval Europe. The usual disclaimer is necessary about how the way we define black is different now than it was then. Europeans absolutely noticed and would sometimes comment on skin color. Yes, good, because some people say they didn't see it. It's like the level of delusion. Place of origin were usually more important factors, depends on who you speak. Because then usually when they speak, even in ancient Rome, when they speak about place of origin, there is a connection with phenotypic traits. Another disclaimer before we continue, goodness gracious, many white and the white supremacist, okay, so there is a max, I need to make a dedicated video with this absolute fixation with white supremacy within academic circles. I don't know what it is. I have never heard the term white supremacy until recently, when this whole thing at university has begun, and now everyone is all about white supremacy. Maybe it's because in my personal life I never really frequented any circle that was pro-white supremacy, I imagine, or circles that were obsessed against white supremacy, but now it's literally everywhere. And as I say, it's become an obsession, it's become the root of all evil, it's become the reason as to why anything negative happens, it's always white supremacy. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm making a separate video. Do look out for that one. I do want to point out, however, that once again, white is lowercase, black is uppercase. So already, Kelpie Cat, as far as I'm concerned, you're an anti-white racist. You'll have to do some work now to remove that original impression. Many white supremacists like to argue that nobody from North Africa in the medieval period could be black, but there were many black North Africans in the Middle Ages. Right, the majority of North Africans in the Middle Ages were not black though. The idea that North Africa was some sort of white oasis where the people were no darker than Italians, what? Something one of my teachers once tried to argue doesn't hold up to the evidence of trade, travel, and exchange between North Africa. Yeah, of course, your teacher was an idiot, but I would like to underline. I mean, I'm Italian, and yeah, whatever. So, what I'm trying to figure out here, a white oasis? Who thinks that North Africa is white? Who? I mean, some sections would have had significant Greek influence, and Greeks, I would consider them white. But, like, the majority of North Africans wouldn't have been white. That doesn't mean they were black, though. So there's that. A lot would have been brown people, but whatever. Before we continue, because the answer is clearly, yeah, African migrants. I mean, the answer is what it is. I mean, I think we know what POC, we know what this is. I'm surprised he uses AD, BC. I was expecting BC, ECE at this point. But guys, we need a little, because this is going to be intense, a little dense, so we need a little fun. So check this one out. Because, of course, I opened up a lot, right? Because people keep asking this. I'll give you the real answer in a minute. But check this one out. Historical accuracy. People of color existed in medieval Europe. Since it's Black History Month, which should be every month. You absolute clown. If every month was Black History Month, one, it would lose the specialty. At that point is Black History Year. Is like, it doesn't make sense. When we decide that 1 month is dedicated to something, like for instance, February could be Black History Month. January could be White History Month. Then we could have, I don't know, Native American History Month. I don't have anything against that. But they are special because it's the month, right? But if every month was Black History Month, you're literally denying Hispanics, you're denying, never mind white. I know you guys hate us, but you're denying indigenous people of other areas. You're denying all Asia. And I know that this type of person doesn't count Japanese as Asians because they say they're white adjacent, whatever that means. But in general, what about Southeast Asia? What about Indonesian people? You're taking it away from them. You're taking it away. Like, this is nonsense already. And that's the beginning. 14 minutes read the maximum I'm willing to give this by cherry. In fact, I imagine the cherry picking. The maximum I'm willing to give this is 60 seconds, never mind 14 minutes. But already we are not starting strong, are we? What a virtuous signaling. Oh, look at me. Look at me. I want every month to be Black Month. Oh my gosh, the cringe. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us, form the wall, defend the truth. And Zack Snyder just announced a faithful King Arthur retelling. Does that mean that he's black at this point? I wanted to spend a moment of the idea of historical accuracy. Please. Specifically, I'd like to talk about how the Middle Ages has been co-opted by racists to fuel this idea that there was ever an all-white Europe. Look, there wasn't, then he says. Europe is majority white. Now and then, in fact, even more then. Europe is majority, unless you want to look at Spain during Muslim conquest. But it's not like, but then again, a Muslim is not a race. Islam is not a race. Watch him say that, because I've already seen someone in the Ask Historian saying that, oh, they were not white, they were Muslim. Idiot. Some Arabs are actually quite white. But if you don't want to consider that, nobody is Semitic, so I want to look at white only West Germanic, however you want to call it. Right, but they're not black. Right? That's what I mean. So you can have a black Muslim, you can have a white Muslim, you can have an Arab Muslim, Semitic, you can have a brown Muslim, you can have, like, Muslim is not an ethnicity. So that already. Anyways, the reality of fact remains that Europe was majority white for its existence. Now, I will give you more on the details, because there is something that I'm going to use comparative analysis to show you how flawed this is. Never mind historical accuracy. I can prove it in 10 sentences, 5 sentences, but I want to see what else he says. The higher they go, the harder they fall. There just simply was not. For as long as there have been people, there has been movement, migration. And that means that, well, yes, but movement is one thing when you walk, it's another thing when you take a plane. And that means that within pretty much any given population at any particular time, there were people of various shades, right? So allow me to take you on a grand tour, please. Check the evolutionary record. The cradle of civilization is largely brown. So like Mesopotamia, that as well, some Semitic people are not brown. I mean, Semitic, in fact, is black people are the ones that are the highest number of phenotypic trait differences. But Semitic, you get a lot of different shades. And then it says, let's see, Mesopotamia is centered on Jordan, Palestine, and other Middle Eastern countries. Jesus was a brown guy. as were most Jews at the time. This sentence as well, back it up with facts, because as far as I understand, Ashkenazi Jews maybe, and even in that case, not really, but it really depends. Egyptians were also likely brown people, if not black folk. False. A percentage of Egyptians were black, the rest would have been brown, tanned in some cases. We have demonstrated it with DNA. Recently was completely debunked. This whole idea of Egyptians being black is nonsense. Phoenicia, Persia, and even Carthage are all civilizations with a good deal of color to go around. Actually, once again, recent DNA analysis has proven that the Carthaginians were more related to the people of the Anatolian Peninsula and the Aegean people, meaning Greeks, than they were even to Semitic people. So we thought they were Semitic, and they were at their core. Probably Phoenicians would have been. But Carthaginians are actually closer to Turks and Greeks. So that too, they're pretty white. And tanned, depending on the person. Now we get to Greece and Rome. Greece dealt with the Phoenicians, brown people. The Egyptians, brown people, okay. Now try telling me there were no brown people anywhere in Greece. Well, this is the stupid thing. Of course, if you deal with absolutes and you say there were zero, and I've heard people say that, and they're stupid. When they say there were zero people of color in Europe. Yeah, that's false. Obviously, it's false. But as long as you don't work with absolutes, then yeah, the majority were white. In fact, let me make this, I do want to say this very early on the video. This is the reality. Europe was majority white. There were some minorities of people that were black, people that were brown, people that were Asian, even smaller minorities in port cities mostly, whereas the hinterland, rural areas, Central Europe, in fact, all of these areas were extremely homogeneous. And when there is diversity, a lot of the times it's diversity still within European populations. That would be the majority. So you would have in a city such as Prague that had a university, same with Paris, so centers of culture, then you would have people, you could have people from Genoa, people from Milan, people from Germany, people from Czech, of course, people from France. So it is diverse, but then if you look at the subsets, if you mean diversity in the modern sense, or you only mean people who are not white, then those would have been almost non-existent in smaller areas, rural areas, centralized areas, hinterland areas, and in port cities and massive towns. Then yes, you would have seen some, but still we're talking minorities. So this idea that you can't say that Europe is white because there were small minority percentage groups within these population clusters, then here is the comparative discussion that I want to present to you. Was Africa black? Would you be okay if I said, or anyone said, well, Africa is not black as a continent? That's a myth, because there were white people, because there were brown people. They never say this, do they? I mean, if we were to apply this, if you ask me, I'm going to say, yeah, Africa is majority black. Of course, I'm not going to, if someone tells me Africa has zero, in the past, in the present, has zero white people, wrong. If they tell me has zero brown people, wrong, particularly in the north. But that doesn't take away from the fact that if you look at it as a continent, the majority of people are black. So only the categorical statements will be found to be false. Likewise, if we were to apply this consistently over the spectrum of all sorts of different continents, Europe was majority white. If someone tells me zero black people, zero brown people, then they're wrong, but only in the case of categorical statements. But if they do say there are the occasional black people, the occasional brown people, then yes, sure, that's true. But they don't do this. They only do this with Europe. It is the same situation as when they say, and I debunked a video about this, when they were saying, well, Romans and Greeks, we shouldn't say that these are European civilization. It's wrong, because there was no united Europe. Well, there still isn't a united Africa, is there? And yet no one is going to complain when they try to push this kind of message about calling the Zulu an African civilization. Do you see how the logic breaks down the split second you sit down? It's always rules for thee, not for me. It is always a matter of double standards, because even though they are right at debunking categorical statements, the mistake they made is that they don't use the same parameters applied to all equally. The history of all people, they don't. They apply different measures. They will never say, oh, that's not African because you shouldn't use the word Africa because Africa was not a term used to denote the entirety of the continent. For instance, the Romans only used it for the north. If we really want to be specific about it, they never do that. And that's why we debunk them. Whoa, look, we have brown and black people everywhere over here, and they're not just slaves or what have you. In fact, a lot of them are likely wealthy and respected by the Greeks. So then there is this thing that they want to create this illusion of a inclusive, diverse, accepting and tolerant world in classical antiquity with the Romans, an extremely brutal civilization, maybe in comparison to others of the time. They were actually, on some instances, they were okay and more open-minded as long as you don't rebel. But if you rebel, or you don't pay your taxes, oh my gosh, yeah, the Romans didn't care about, oh, well, yeah, but I have to respect the ethnicity now because this person is a person of the minority group. Come on. Right, there we go. Rome does multiculturalism. Oh my gosh. Yeah, very multicultural. When I come to your place, I steal your resources. I kill everyone who fights against me. I let your women and children starve. That's what Julius Caesar did when he did the siege at Alesia. So they do that, but it's in the name of multiculturalism. That's why they're doing it. Eventually, Rome rose up. Rome does something similar, creating a very large empire across the Mediterranean throughout the Fertile Crescent, Greece, yes. The Romans tended to take over by adopting the local customs, in some instances. They sent in Roman politicians and armed forces, and they enforced Roman law, yes. But they also allowed for local customs and religion. True, yeah, for instance, the Jews had to pay a tax because they weren't worshipping the emperor. So give me money at that point. So it is open-minded compared to maybe like an Egyptian pharaoh. If you don't worship him, you'll be beheaded, I guess. But still, it isn't because they respect multiculturalism. They respect coin. Are we going to say it? Are we going to tell it how it is? The only channel, guys. The only channel that tells it how it is. And again, a lot of these subjects of the Roman Empire would have been brown and black. People of color also likely rose through the ranks in their local areas if they were wealthy, yes. Becoming educated and powerful, yes, so it's about empowering. Roman elites would have needed to work with local elites to establish the power base in any given area. Yes, exactly. So that was a tactical choice. It was a tactical choice. Also, Roman elites are quite xenophobic, if you want to use that term, when it comes to other people. We also have war with Carthage, Libya, which was supposedly a Phoenician colony. Not supposedly, was a Phoenician colony. But again, it's likely full of brown and black people. No, that's not what the DNA shows. You're wrong. And so we have Hannibal, who was not black, entering what is today Spain and trying to take elephants over the Pyrenees. Yeah, how many brown and black people gave up on going home and just plonked down there? How many people moved through the Roman... Oh, this is all speculation, right? Yeah, the ports, exactly, the ports. Finally, a little bit of the ports, yes, up to a certain extent still. How many joined the Roman army? Yeah, some exilia, usually, unless you're a citizen. Then you can join the heavy infantry corps. Now, medieval Europe is where most imagine this insular, all-white society. Like after Rome fell, the people of the British Isles and France booted out everyone who wasn't white. You know what? Go to Czech Republic now. You can count the number of black people with both hands that you're going to run into. Like, it's still predominantly overly white. And that's the same in Nordic countries. Well, it's changing because of immigration situation now. But I'm just saying, remove for a moment the current immigration patterns and waves, both in England and in other places. I mean, I heard that in England, Mohammed is the most common name now. But that was not the case in Anglo-Saxon England. I mean, do I really have to say that? Do I really have to specify that? And regardless, it doesn't even matter because this person is not about the facts. Swap it around. Swap it around. Now, medieval Africa is where most imagine this insular, all-black society. They're never going to do that. They're never going to say that. Never, because it clashes with their political message. Highly unlikely, this is a very racist myth that started building in the Victorian era and was advanced by eugenicists. It eventually came to be embodied in Nazi histories, right? But all right. No, you need a T here. You misspelled it. Let's debunk it right here and now. Well, you see, to debunk, as a debunker, to debunk, you need to present the facts. First of all, you need to be versed in the facts and study it. You clearly never have. But then again, a debunking doesn't mean take something you perceive to be a myth, whether it's a myth or not, we have to see how you express it, and then you replace it with another myth. That's not debunking. That's propaganda. That's not debunking. To debunk, you need to take the myth and swap it with the truth. That's how it works. Medieval Europe was never some old white society. Medieval Africa was never an old black society. They'll never say it. Dear noble ones, stay noble, stay curious, fight for the truth.